Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome back into the Garden of Doom. This is episode 44 for those of you keeping score. And this week we are going into the Amazon. Yeah, we have a special guest this week who is in Brazil. His name is Rodrigo Machado, and he's actually in the state. Well, he'll tell you what the state is, but it's not Rio de Janeiro, it's not Sao Paulo, so this is authentic. I'm not just making up a place, but he's in a state down there. He's in a city of 3 million, which in the United States would be a 4 major league franchise city. But to be honest, I never heard of this city until moments ago. And basically, as he describes it geographically, it's in the southeast, but not on the coast. And sort of if you triangulate Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and one other city, his state is right in the middle there. And we're going to go over some of the culture of Brazil and the surrounding areas, because some of what we're talking about is going to cross over any modern state lines. Because we're going to be talking about mythology and legends and gods, and of course I'm going to do what I do, which is to look for commonalities and draw connections where there might not be any, which will hopefully lead to interesting conversation. So Rodrigo has 2 degrees. He has a social science degree and a cinema degree as well. And he's a great guy, and I met him several years ago in another Facebook group, and we've always kept in touch and always got along well, which probably doesn't speak too well of him. But and I reached out to him several months ago, and I said, hey, do you know anybody who can help me with Garden of Doom, exploring the cultures and the mythologies of the world? And he said, I can do that. And I said, great, that's awesome. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rodrigo, and he can tell you a little bit about himself and where he is, and then we'll get on with our program. So welcome into the Garden of Doom, Rodrigo.
Hello, Jeff. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing great. Tomorrow is Mother's Day here in Brazil, and I'm fine. My mother is healthy. She took her COVID shot. My older brother is healthy. My younger brother is healthy. Family's doing good. I'm working on for my master's degree. and living a healthy, stable life. Consider all things considered.
Yeah, I know that you lost a lot of weight, and you've really dedicated yourself to getting yourself in shape. And you posted some pictures a while ago in a place I'm no longer at, so I haven't seen it, but I'm sure that your progress is continuing. Now, if just as a matter of technical, if I could ask you to speak up a little, because for whatever reason your sound bar looks a lot lower than mine. But tell the good folks where you live, the name of the city, and basically, if you can elaborate on the geography that I gave, just to give them some idea as to where you are.
Okay, I live in the city of Belo Horizonte. That is roughly a 3 million population city. It's the capital of the state of Minas Gerais. It's the southeast of the Brazil. It's the state of my city is basically gives a vibe of very mixed culture. Brazil itself, and Belo Horizonte, it really is a metropolis city. We are not known. We don't have this main street appeal to the entire world, but we are a very stable city, and we currently known for football and the carnival, and we are not much
else. How close are you to the Amazon River and to the rainforests?
Very far.
Very far. Okay.
Very far.
Yeah, just for those who don't know, Brazil is the largest country by far in South America, and the landmass of Brazil, not the shape itself, but the landmass of Brazil itself is around the same size as the entire United States, at least the continental United States, but maybe the continental United States and Alaska. Brazil is a large country spatially. It's basically half the continent, or at least 1/3 of an entire continent. But it's a big place with a lot of people, and I think people forget just how big Brazil really is. It's also the only.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Jeff. Basically, you can fit the entire Europe in Brazil. You can fit the entire Europe in Brazil. That's how big my country is.
Wow. And Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only South American country that speaks Portuguese.
Yes. For some strange reason, the Portuguese was the one who colonized us, but everybody else here, basically Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, I could go on in South America, but the Spanish got them all, and the Portuguese got us, for the better, for the worse, and we got to learn how to speak Portuguese.
What about those little countries that are sort of on the East Coast? There's like, I think, Suriname, Guyana, maybe San Marino. Do they speak Spanish also?
I honestly didn't research that. I know that South America in itself, Brazil is the only one who speaks Portuguese. I know that for a fact that when I was getting my degree for social science, a teacher of mine said, if you want to do one thing every single one of you should do is to learn how to speak English, because the entire world will speak English. Then I raise my hand and say, what should I do, because I already speak English and I believe fluently at that time. What language should I speak also if I already speak English? Then she looked at me and said, speak Spanish, because the entire South America speaks Spanish and only we speak Portuguese. So that's what she said.
Probably good advice. I probably would have gone with Chinese or German, but okay, but probably practical advice for South America. All right, so as we were touching on, Brazil is really a melting pot. I think it's really funny that there's probably tens of millions more people who speak Portuguese in Brazil than in Portugal itself, but that's really neither here nor there. So obviously we already touched on that. Portugal colonized Brazil, but when or how did Brazil achieve its independence?
Independence of Brazil?
Yep. Yes.
7th of September of 1822 was exactly the date, and it was in São Paulo.
Was it a war? Was it like a revolutionary war, or did the Portuguese just have to leave?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Portugal was not really feeling like that. Independence of Brazil was very. It was a war. It was a war. I will not say that compared to the America independence, it was that violent. I won't say it was that violent, but it really was a battlefield. It really was a battlefield.
Are you like in an auto repair shop or something?
There's a construction right next to my building.
Oh, okay. That's funny. All right, so that's interesting because I never learned about the Brazilian War of Independence, but maybe that's something I'll look into next, but that's a different show. Maybe it's something we'll talk about. Who knows in the future? So,
yes.
Brazilians, as you pointed out, a lot of European descent, Portuguese, obviously, German, French, Italian. You said that basically Europeans account for more than half of the population, but there's a lot of mixed ethnic backgrounds, and that's sort of always been tolerated. Well, I don't know about always, but long time been tolerated in Brazil more than maybe other places, and that you have basically two large classes of mixed ethnicities. One is mixed European and African ancestry, mulatto, same word used to be used here also. I don't think it's really used as much, though it probably still exists. And then mestizos, which are people of European and indigenous or First Nations, Indian ancestry. Is that about right?
Yep.
And so that's even larger than the, let's just say, pure indigenous populations, percentage-wise.
Oh, yes. Without going straight to the indigenous conversation, when it comes to, since we touched about the independence of the Brazil quickly, when the Portuguese came here to colonize and they brought in the Society of Jesus, which I'll touch about that later. The Jesuits to Christianize, and the Indians they decimate, and with the slavery to that time they decimate pretty much the indigenous here in Brazil. It's very little the number of indigenous that have survived through the years here in Brazil. Somebody would call himself like in the word pure race or like pure Indian. It's very little. It's even hard for you to find like a number specifically, especially the what called Tupi-Guarani, which is the original, the ones who were habitant here by the longest registers, the ones who were here before the Portuguese come.
What's the name of that people?
I apologize because is Indian. Tupi-Guarani.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is hard to say, but you sounded very authentic with it. So Tupi-Guarani, is that close?
Yes.
Close.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They were basically the indigenous that inhabited Brazil when the colonizer, the Portuguese colonizer, come up here, and it was amazing because the indigenous here, as it was registered, they speak about, as they told here, they speak about 150 language and dialects, the indigenous here.
Wow.
And when came, well, it was the Portuguese the language came disappearing, and the culture came a destiny to the culture as time goes by. And the Indians was, polytheists. The way to see the world changed dramatically with the Jesuits. And the population today, I believe that I believe that if I were to guess here, I believe that of the total population, you can get about 51,000. 51,000 would be like what's left in Brazil.
Wow.
Considering that the population of my state only, my city is 3 million, my state is 20 million. So if you get just 51,000, what's left about on Brazil, which I don't know how many was left in some other state, some other country, fled to other countries. That's just sad. That's kind of depressing.
That's very sad. So I'm going to use the word genocide, but I'm asking you this question in a more simplistic term, because I really don't know. Was the genocide, was it purposeful? Was it because diseases came that there weren't immunities? Was it a combination of both? How did it go from presumably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of the Tupi Guarani people to just 51,000 in, probably 400 or 500 years?
Well, I was about to talk about I think a good idea about this is about talking about the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about them and go straight to them. Basically, to those who don't know the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, they are religious order of the Catholic Church from Rome. I don't know who founded them exactly. I think it was from Pope Paul III. I was specialized in religion when I was studying social science. It was sort of my thing. The Jesuits, they basically work in education, research, culture person. They were missionaries. They were go to retreats, minister hospitals and parish, sponsor social ministries. That's what they're doing. And
the Catholic Church, they were basically they were the missionaries, but they were permitted or encouraged or employed very harsh tactics to convert.
Yes, the success of them in converting the indigenous people, in case of the Brazil, it was because by the records they tried to understand the native cultures, especially the language. To be fair, is credited that the first grammar of the Tupi language was compiled by a man named José de Anchieta and printed in 1595. José de Anchieta was a man from the Jesuits. So they usually gather the aborigines in communities, the Jesuits reductions, where the natives worked for the community and were evangelized. So they basically, the Jesuits have frequent disputes, who I studied, with other colonists who wanted to enslave the natives. The most European colonists, mostly Portuguese, they want to enslave the natives. The action of the Jesuits saved many natives, to be fair, from being enslaved by the Europeans. But they also disturbed the ancestral way of life. And, when you talk about disease, they have indeed inevitably helped spread infectious disease against which the indigenous have no natural defenses. It was common to hear when I was growing up the story about how they spread, like they had clothes, they would give clothes that had disease. I forgot how to say their names in English, but they would give to indigenous to wear this, wear that, but they had no immune system for that. The slave labor and trade were at that time essential for the economy of Brazil and other American colonies. I think that's something that's registered in history pretty well. And the Jesuits, they usually did not object to the slaving of the African people, for instance, but they rather critiqued the conditions of slavery. So the Indians, they, yeah.
Okay, that is fair enough. So, but we didn't actually get into we know that the Catholic Church was heavily involved, but was again, and I don't want to spend too much time on the history because we want to get into more fun stuff or interesting stuff, but I can't just leave it alone. Again, we have a population that was very large and now is basically the size of a pretty big town in a suburb. For an entire country, which is, Brazil, I think has almost 200 million people in it. So, again, was it a violent genocide by war or weaponization? Did they catch smallpox and it was unintentional? Was it a combination, a confluence of all the events? Portugal's not that big a country. It's sort of hard to believe that even if they and all the European countries during this time were in sort of conflict with each other and spread all over, sort of defending lots of territories and islands and countries and doing this, that, and the other. It's sort of hard to believe that Portugal, even if they deployed 10 or 20,000 troops, which I don't know if they could have or would have, to Brazil, if they had I'll just say the power. I don't know the right word, the military ammunition to cause that kind of carnage and death, but I could be extremely wrong about that. So what do they teach you in school, and what's your knowledge of how we went from hundreds of thousands of indigenous to 51,000 nationwide?
I think that basically is what is attributed basically was diseases. I don't know how to say this disease in English, but it's called variola. There is sarampo. I think sarampo is smallpox, English.
Yep.
The yellow fever, or even the flu, is in the reasons that many of the populations here were. They said, I believe there was about 3 million Indians and 1,500 when Brazil was found, and to ridiculous low numbers. If short to the point, it was the big evil was the diseases. The Indians just had no immunity for what the colonizer brought them for here. The Europeans were used to those type of diseases at that time. The Indians were just not. They were just not used to this, and it did not help that the colonizers were not respecting their culture, etc. So, short to the point, the diseases.
Okay, it's similar to the rest of the Americas. Nobody came here with great intentions, but the immunities and the diseases that Europeans came brought with them that were highly contagious. There was just no defense for those, and the diseases probably did most of the work. We have no idea what the European powers would have done without the diseases. It could have turned out the same way, just taken longer. But all right, I don't want to harp on that because this is not a history podcast per se, though we go there. But I thought that the flavor of the history and the background was relevant. And one last thing I'm going to ask you about. I know that you are in Brazil and from Brazil, and that's most of your expertise. But the Tupi-Guarani people certainly were not limited to the borders of Brazil, because there were no borders of Brazil at the time. And some of the deities and legends we're going to talk about undoubtedly cover other, what we'll call countries now. So what is the general region that we're talking about now, and does it expand beyond Brazil, and what parts of the sort of neighboring countries or the entire continent might these cultural, theological, mythological characters that we're about to talk about play into? Where do they apply in South America?
Well, when it comes to Tupi-Guarani mythology or the Brazilian mythology, it really is Brazilian. It really is Brazilian. But when we touch about the folklore, some of them, they vary from place to place. But not only Latin America, but some of them vary from places such as Spain, Portugal, mostly European places. But there are some figures in the folklore that is, I'm going to give a spoiler, for instance, the werewolf. There is a version of the werewolf in the Brazilian mythology of the Indians, which is also have our version in all folklore. And I believe that, of course, even in other places in the world, there is a version for the werewolf. Our version is very different than the version of the Europeans, for instance.
Well, that's a teaser. People are going to have to listen to get to that, and we will get to that because I love me some werewolves. They're only second to vampires in my panoply of traditional monsters. Well, Godzilla's first, but everyone else is second. So, Brazilian mythology, you said, was a mix of beliefs from many people, and there was a lot of influence, notably from the Tupi-Guarani tribes that lived in that region. And, you know, would anyone know the names of any of the other tribes? I mean, anyone. Of course somebody would. But are there any, like, major names? Like, I know the Caribs originally came from northern South America. Were the Caribs influential in Brazil or not? Of course, the Caribs, the Caribbean is named after the Caribs. You know, they displaced the Arawaks, who possibly came from the South American mainland. Are there any other tribes that people may have heard of?
In Brazil, people who study the Indians, they do know some of the older tribes that, well, in a very polite way, got the short end of the stick. Mm-hmm. But the Tupi-Guarani are the tribes that basically get the prestige, in a very loose way of me saying that. They are the ones who the mythology gets built upon. They are the main one.
And the most famous South American tribe is probably the Incas, but that's on the other side of the Andes.
Yeah, that's the other side.
They never made it.
And there's the Mayas and the other one. Yeah, that's other, and the Brazil has no idea with the Mayas and the Incas. That's other country, etc.
What about like Toltecs and Olmecs, or is that also more northern?
More northern.
Gotcha.
More northern.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't think that, we could get into smaller population-sized tribes, but I don't think that'll do any good, and there's probably other podcasts for that as well. So let's talk about the fun stuff. So we started with the prominent figure, sort of the head of the gods, and I'm not even going to try to say the name, but it starts with an N-H-A-N. So tell us, who is this god, and how do we try to say it?
Okay, so I even said to Jeff, it's a ridiculous hard name, I know, so if you cannot understand his name, I will not blame you. The name is Yanderuvusu.
Okay, so I'm going to spell it in case people want to do their own research in Google. It's Nhanderuvuc, but the C has sort of like a tail at the bottom, which I guess is a Portuguese thing. I don't know how to say it other than a C. U. But I suspect if you spell that name, that the Google machine will know what you're looking at, because that combination of letters can't be too original. Now, you indicated that the legend says that in the beginning, all was chaos, and there was nothing solid on the planet. And the seeds of all the beings were shuffled about aimlessly, without center, without right or left or direction. And that seems like a lot of Genesis myths, a lot of origin myths, the creation myths. And then you stated that in the midst of this storm, is the word that you used, something without an explanation happened, a breath. And right there, I couldn't help but note that in Genesis of the Bible, the three major monotheistic religions, it began, in the beginning there was a word. A word and a breath, it's very, very similar. That sort of knocked me for a loop, that there was a completely different culture on the other side of the world, completely independent, and their creation myth also starts with basically a breath, which isn't much different than a word.
Yeah. I myself, when I did my research and I saw that, a funny thing is that there is a Brazilian historian and anthropologist called Camará Cascudo. He affirms that we're gonna get to the head of the table, Chupan. He affirms that he is a work of adaptation of the catechism, and basically some of the anthropologists I'm going to get here, they have an idea. They have an idea that, for instance, that the Tupi-Guaranis, one of them, a Brazilian writer, Osvaldo Ulrico, he had an opinion that the natives had a notion of the existence of a force, of a god, superior to all. They have the simple. He said that they had, in spite of a simple religious idea that characterized them, they had the notion of the supreme being, but they had no name for it. So he thought, okay, they know that they exist, supreme being, but they don't have a name for it. They don't have why. They cannot explain to it. So that's how the principle for this ridiculous name, Yanderuvusu, based was. That was the principle.
So that word, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, is not a he. It's a thing. It's basically the Big Bang Theory given a one-word name.
Yes. In the legend, they usually don't. It's fuzzy, the legend for them, because it's consistent in the legend that for them, he is the director of all creation, the Yanderuvusu. For some people, they confuse him with Tupan, but Tupan, who, if you want to get to now, is basically, in the most consistent legend, the figure that want me to talk about it.
Well, we're going to get there, but I'm still trying to see if we can do some interpretation that you know, a regular person, meaning myself, can gather this. So what I'm gathering is Nandaruvuku, which I'm sure I pronounce it terribly, but people know who we're talking about around now, is sort of a combination of a being, but it's a state of existence at the same time. But basically was the creation, is there, but is basically neutral, not really particularly interested in Earth and the earthbound, and so they're sort of a king of the gods, almost like the universe is its own thing, decided to come into being, decided to create stuff, but sort of stopped there, and then these other gods took over.
Yes, it's basically a way for. It's basically is the creator God, if that makes sense. It's like he exists, but he has no form. In the beginning, he creates and destroys everything. Basically, the idea is that he is interesting because the religion that we are most used to is the Christianity, and we don't have a knowledge for that, but he's basically like something that creates everything, and he's like, I'm gone. You all here, take care of this for me.
Well, but there are analogies in other religions. They're not exactly direct, but like in Norse mythology, Odin's the king of the gods, but there were these realms and other beings and they were basically the equals or rivals of the gods. So something created Earth and the realms, and then the gods came up. With Greek mythology, you had the Titans who were before the gods, and there was probably something before the Titans because they talk about birth. So I'm sure there's others too, and hopefully over the course of the show, I will learn so much, but unfortunately, I will also forget so much. But there's, I'm sure there's others that are similar. But I think conceptually we have it. We have a. Are you a Marvel Comics guy by any chance?
Oh yes, I am.
Okay. There used to be a character who was basically the universe. And I can't remember what his name was, but he was basically, he was a giant shape, and inside there were all stars and whatever. And I'm picturing it was basically the same guy. This is our Nandu. I'm going to call him Nandu for short. That he created everything, but really sort of stayed out of it after that. Everything that flowed from it was sort of like, he's like, yeah, this is what's happening. I could change things if I want, but I don't want to. I'm busy doing other stuff. Okay, so I simplified it a lot, probably too simple, but so the breath start.
The best job, Jeff.
Thank you.
I create thing and I get out.
Yeah, not bad work if you can get it. I wonder what kind of CV you have to have for that. Do you think he embellished it at all and made his internships sound more important than they were? Never mind. That's a different topic. So then, from the breath, there was a simple sigh that arose, and it grew and it multiplied, and it took shape, and it became a thought. Now, this is, could be an extension of the word thing, of course, but I could not help but note that sound and resonance is a big part of the mythology, the science, if you will, or some of the scientific theories of pyramid technology and ley lines and the polarities, that sound energy, vril, that all of the pyramids were all there to harness sound energy. And this myth fits in perfectly, that the resonance was the creation. The resonance is that the word, the sound, the breath, the sigh, the resonance created everything. And that fits in with the theory of pyramid technology. Of course, the most famous periods are in Egypt, but there's tons of pyramids all throughout Mesoamerica, and also in Angkor Wat, and there's Bosnian pyramids, and depending on who you believe, there's pyramids everywhere. But I know Machu Picchu was Incan and in Peru, and so I'm wondering, are there pyramid cultures, pyramid traditions, pyramid religions in the Brazilian region?
No, not of my knowledge.
Well, there goes that. There goes.
Never in my study I saw about pyramids culture in Brazil.
No is a fair answer. So this is fun. See, this is what happens to me sometimes. I draw these connections. I think they're really deep and insightful, and it turns out that as great as it would have been, there's no pyramid culture in all of Brazil. So, oops, there goes that. Well, maybe the gods just got lost. I don't know. I laugh at myself. All right, so let's get to what we'll call sort of the king of the gods. They're Odin. Seems like a combination of Odin and Thor in one. We have Tupa, T-U-P-A, but there's a... What is that vowel called over the A?
I take it back, Jeff. I take it back what I just said. Apparently, by the power of the Google machine, in Sao Paulo, an archaeologist site said that they found what may be the presence of old culture advanced in Curitiba. The Institute National Special Research studies made with granite what could be the first pyramid in Brazil.
Okay, good. The first, that means there's more. And listen, Brazil is covered in forests and rainforests and clouds and mountains and all sorts of stuff. There's more pyramids there. I'm right, everybody. You heard it here first. My thesis is correct. I want credit. I want accolades. I want a PhD. I want professorships. I want to go on a speaking tour. So thank you, Rodrigo. You can share in my credit. We want joint credit. Me and Rodrigo, we're going to do a joint speaking tour, and we'll take business class. We don't need first class, but 4-star hotels. So now that our careers are made and we're going to be famous, let's go to Tupa, who you indicate that Tupa recognizes, again, Nandu, which is not the word, but Nandu as his boss. Tupa actually worships Nandaru Vuku, and oh no, that's not, I got that wrong. The natives worship both of them. That Nandu Vuku has a messenger, and his messenger is Tupa. Tupa, you indicated, not exactly a god, is more like a force of nature, sort of a manifestation of God in the form of thunder and I guess weather, but sort of the skies and the heavens. Is that about right?
Yeah, the legend varies from culture for the culture between the indigenous, but it sticks most of it that he basically, the most clear association that I can throw right away is that Tupa mostly is similar to Zeus. He's basically mostly similar to Zeus. His name in Tupi means thunder. His power is the sound of thunder. Basically, the natives thought that whenever there was a thunder and the storm was cried, they thought that was him expressing himself, that he was either mad or some bad omen was going to happen. They gave him credit for the light and that he lives in the sun, and that was also his created. Tupan is basically the head chief, the big guy in the mythology, aside of who we just speak. When I said that he is very similar to Zeus, because that was a very correlation to people to understand. That's because it has. I don't have exact list, but his behavior is very related to being a merciful and benevolent person. But he also has, like Zeus, is famous for having extramarital cases and generating many illegitimate cases, illegitimate children. And I had to literally check Zeus to see, okay, how many illegitimate children Zeus had. He literally had a list of more than 20, and I was like, my goodness, this is ridiculous. And I did not find out that the list of Tupan. Good, because that means that he was able to keep his record close and not get alimony for that.
Well, that's a real god. That's a real god that can keep his record sealed.
Yeah, but yes, Tupan, he really is similar to Zeus in that aspect.
Did his kids, his offspring, were they demigods, or did he just have kids? Were they like Hercules and Theseus, and did he create demigods with powers, or was it just he sort of went down, had sex, had kids, left?
Basically, the story is that he descended to Earth. He is responsible for the creation of humankind for the Tupi Guaranis. Being clear. He descended to Earth, and they described it as a place as a mountain. Funny enough, in Paraguay, in Areguá, in Paraguay. And from this place, he created everything on the face of the earth, including ocean, forests, animals, the stars were placed in the sky at the time. Also, he created us, the human beings. The first humans created by Tupan would have been Hupavi, the father of the peoples, Saipavi, the mother of the peoples, and those two would have given birth to the large number of daughters and to three sons, called Tuma Arandu, the sage, Marangatu, the generous leader, and Japeuzar, the liar. The later, a thief. The later was a thief and a crook, according to the legend, and would commit suicides.
Why?
But he was resurrected as a crab, and for this, all the crabs were cursed to walk back like him.
Oh, so crabs walk backwards because this god who committed suicide was resurrected as a crab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, in fairness, crabs are delicious. All right, so after Vuku created the souls in the waters and Tupa, he created souls in waters, which are called Lara or Lara. And then...
Yara.
Okay. Oh, Yara, sorry. And we already talked about Tupa, who was, the weather, the climate, the wind. So we have our water, we have the souls of humans, and we have the heavens, basically. Sort of typical for theologies. That's a pretty normal breakdown. Plenty of commonality there. People can draw their own parallels, should they like. And I encourage them to do so because that's fun. And these are rabbit holes that got me into this thing, and is part of the reason why I do the show, because I've seen all these parallels, and it took me decades to get to the point where I could see that certain things were the same, are very similar, and that was really fascinating. So all right, so then we have Jaki, Jaci, or Yaki, Jaci, the mother of animals. And in Brazilian mythology, you indicated that she was the moon goddess, the protectors of animals, lovers, reproduction, plants, and basically anything in the night where people would steal away in the night and do nice things, I guess except for night hunting. But it included offerings, so we're going to have to figure out what kind of offerings we're talking about. She also avoided war, so somewhat Athena-like, but not exactly. And she's a goddess who prefers to observe before intervening. So that is the over of Yasi, but she also had a twin sister, Guarasi, which is the name of the tribe, I believe, who's the sun god, and also that she's the wife of Tupa as well. So we're starting to get closer and closer to Egyptian and Roman, Greek, Norse mythologies where we are family. So maybe we should stop there and we should back up and you should tell us a little bit about Yasi.
Yeah, Yasi, the moon goddess, she, when you talk about a little bit of Athena, she gives a lot of vibes of Diana of the Romans. I think Isis of the ancient Egypt, a lot of similarities. Yasi is like this beauty, imperfection, awakened by night. There's two versions basically of her legends. One version is that the sun god Guarasi, the sun god, got tired of his job and one day had to sleep. And when he closed his eyes, the world fell to darkness. So to brighten his darkness while sleeping, Tupã created Yasi for him, the moon, to illuminate the night and bright softness and charm to the world. Yasi was a goddess so beautiful that when Guarasi awakened by her light, he fell in love with her. And so enchanted, he went back to sleep so he could see her again. But when the sun opened his eyes, he admired the moon lighting up. She went to bed, fulfilled her mission. So Guarasi went to Tupã and created Ruda, the love and its messenger. Love when you know light or darkness, it could night them at dawn. And this version of the story, when there's eclipse, when to be solar or lunar, basically eclipse, is a moment when Yasi and Guaraná are falling together in love and more, and people can use imagination. And the most famous version is the other one that, actually Guarasi is the brother, a twin brother of Yasi. Guarasi and Yasi are twin brothers, and actually Tupã is the husband of Yasi.
Now, wasn't Isis and Osiris brother and sister as well?
I believe, according to the Egyptian mythology, yes.
And Apollo and Athena, I know, are brother and sister. So,
yes.
Also not unusual for there to be sort of brother and sister teams, but also somewhere embedded in all these religions and theologies and panoplies it's not entirely clear that they were always just purely brother and sister, that maybe they had some Lannister brother and sister stuff going on.
Yeah. I think people, yeah. And that Tupã was his, she was the wife of Tupã, and they were the first couple ever. And even it gets more, I won't say weird, but it gets stranger.
Weird's okay.
And,
this is Garden of Doom. We use weird.
And Tupã, also in this version, created her. So she actually is considered his daughter, but she also considered his sister, as there is a belief in the story that Tupã said in the language, I will not have only children, because all are my brothers and sisters, even they come from me.
Well, you know what? Wasn't Eve created from Adam's rib? I mean, that's not so far off, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have just had a holy war declared on me by 3 religions. So we have her, and we have Guaraci, and then I think you already talked to Bayara or Uriah as the Lady of the Waters. And she's basically a mermaid that lives in the Amazon. She's the goddess of the water, wow, I can't even say this word. Well, I'm going to let you take it because you can say the words and you can probably describe it better than I can as well. But first of all, if I missed anything, feel free to back up and cover it before we jump into this. But Ayara, I think that's so. I think we're sort of done with Guaraci, possibly, but if not, correct me, and then we're on to Ayara.
Yep, we're done. Jaci, the only thing that I think that there's nothing else. And Iara, she is considered the mud of water, according to the Brazilian mythology, and she's a beautiful mermaid. She basically, people can already guess, from the European side of the lore of the mythology, she got converted to the mermaid. The fishermen from Brazil, they from fresh or saltwater, they tell stories of watch out with Yara, you're gonna be drowned in passion by her songs. She's gonna take you to bed late at night at water. She's gonna appear seductive to the martyrs. It has the myth of the mermaid, which is not an old myth. It's not a unknown mythology for a lot of people. Not something that I found like this particular unknown by it.
Okay, very good. What is the word, and you might have said it already, and I might just not recognize it because you pronounced it correctly, but you noted the fierce Ipu Piara and the African Lemanja. What are they, and how do they tie into this Brazilian god? Are they basically comparing Ayara to other cultures, and like the European mermaid? Is it a similar concept, a similar kind of being or entity?
I'm sorry?
You noted, I'm sorry, that was very convoluted. You noted a word called the IPUPIARA and the African Lemanja, LEMANJA, in context with the mermaid and with Ayara. And I'm just wondering, what is a Ipu Piara and what is the African Lemanja? I mean, I know what a mermaid is.
Oh, Lemanja, that's my candomblé. I apologize. That's it's an African tradition. That is in Brazil. It's called candomblé. It would be it's not my specialty to explain. But it's basically, there's a tradition that Lemanja is basically like this, they call it Orisha of the salt water. She is basically known as the mother of the oldest Orishas. There's kind of like a tradition that you offer her something in the water and get something. My knowledge of Candomblé is honestly not that good, but she's a figure on that.
That's okay, because you know what? I'm going to do a cheap plug, because in a couple weeks my guest is going to be the host of the History of Africa podcast, and while he does a excellent history show, and I really commend everyone to listen to it, because there are no other shows that focus just on the history of Africa, and there's only 2 seasons so far, so it's an easy catch-up, with most of the episodes being 30 minutes or less. But we're going to go over some of the, like the same stuff we're doing, folklore, tradition, religions, legends, stuff like that, and I will ask him about the La Manja. His name's Andy, by the way. But he's going to be on in a couple of weeks, so people certainly tune into that one, and definitely check out his podcast. So whether or not it's your expertise or not doesn't matter, because you clued me into something to ask him about, which is great in and of itself. So you noted that the fishermen all over Brazil, whether they're in fresh or salt water, because of course there's both, tell stories about young men who give in to the charms of Ayara, which is not different than mermaid stories or the sirens, all over. Sailors all over the world have talked about being lured by the seas, by the calls and the temptations of the water. It looks like she is mostly nocturnal and appears seductive, towards you said the margins of the water. I am guessing that means as the water meets the land?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And she's half woman, half fish. She has her hair adorned with red flowers. I don't know if there's any symbolism to that. And sometimes she takes full human form and goes in search of victims, so sort of like a huntress. So it's almost like Splash, but she could change form whenever she wanted to, or the Little Mermaid, but it didn't require a magical spell to make the transformation and then reverse it. So is there anything more to that? Did I get that right?
No, you get pretty much.
Okay, but she's also a goddess. She's a goddess of the waters, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything about offspring, or does she just have her pleasure and she doesn't procreate, or does she also have demigods out there or children out there?
I believe that there is a story about her and Jaraguari. There's a lore that Jaraguari was an Indian from the tribe of Manaus that fell in love with her. The story was he was a super strong guy, etc., like the alpha basically of the tribe, and he was love and respect because he treated everybody with affection. So basically, one day his mother knows that her son was becoming different, and he climbed a river, and he only returned at night, sad and lonely. The mother looked at him anxiously and said, "Why you come back so late? Beware of the danger of the forest, my son." And he replied, "Mother, I saw a young woman of extraordinary beauty swimming among the flowers of the stream. She has golden hair, and her song is more beautiful than of anyone." The mother was in terror. "Yara, you're enchanted by Yara. If you not run from it, you'll be taken by the bottom of the water." And apparently the story is that he did not listen to his mother's advice. And days later, the canoe in which he went for fish appeared empty, flowing in the waters of the river. And he said that he went with the beautiful mermaid in his arms, and since then, he was dead. That's the story. But apparently the story is that she didn't drown him, and he now lives with her in her place underwater. Since then, the Indians have stopped fishing at night, and he was the first man that she ever loved.
Aww, well that's sweet. Sort of star-crossed lovers, but they made it work. They compromised. He went to her realm, So that's good. There are similar types of stories along the vein. I mean, I just love the commonalities. I wish I could think of any offhand, but we've got plenty of, the alpha, the strongest of the tribe, the king, the prince, whatever, that was attracted to a god or goddess, or the god or goddess was attracted to them, and either they live happily ever after, or something tragic happens, or a little bit of both. So now we're getting to the 7 legendary monsters, which is cool because 7 is a number that comes up in every religion and every mythology and every story, and it still comes up today. I mean, and you have Lucky 7 and all of that, and a lot of people will tell you that's because there's 7 stars in the Pleiades system that are, bright, and I think it's part of the Taurus constellation, and then you've got the 7 sisters, and there were the 7 sisters who tried to tempt Solomon. You've got the 7 hills of Rome. I mean, the 7 sign. 7 comes up a lot, but a lot of numbers come up a lot. But I feel like I would be not doing my job here, and I'm the one who makes my job description here, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out 7. But we have the 7 legendary monsters, so I'm going to turn it over to you because you are our expert on these monsters.
Yeah. So before speaking about the 7, I'm going to briefly speak about Tao. So I believe I mentioned it later. I did not mention him later, but Tao is the name of an evil spirit in Guarani mythology. He was sometimes referred to as the evil spirit, as such as may have been the personification of evil itself. So this is the top heel, guys. Tao was created along with his opposite. And
who's his opposite?
Kapan.
Ah, okay. I should have known that.
Tao found himself enamored by a woman, just a normal woman named Kirana, the daughter of a guy named Maragatu, who lived in the Guarani tribe. So Tao, what he did was he disguised himself as a handsome young man, of course, and woo her. And here's why the number 7, Jeff, you ask, for 7 days before deciding to kidnap her. But his plot was foiled by Angatupiri, the spirit of goodness. Tao and Angatupiri fought each other for 7 days and 7 nights, and the basic good against evil fights until he was defeated. Following his defeat, he was exiled from the land by the god of war and valor, Bijovarai. Tao would not be easily defeated, says the legend, and in spite of his expulsion, he was able to return and kidnap the beautiful Kirana. It's assumed that he raped her while keeping her in captivity. Although sometimes the tale is still different because the Guarani did not have a writing language. Most of these tales are mouth to mouth, and some accounts tell that Tao and Kirana actually got married. Whichever the case is, the product of Tao and Kirana intercourse was 7 children who were cursed by the goddess Arese and born as monsters. So they have 7 were revered or feared. They were the revered or feared, each possessing different abilities and traits by the Guarani lore. So there's the number 7 there, Jeff.
Wow. Yeah, that is a great story. So I guess we should go in order following yours. Teju Jagwa or Teyu Yagwa. I wonder, is that where the word jaguar came from, or is that just me reaching?
Good question. I really don't know. You got me on that one.
That's okay. It's probably me reaching anyway. But I know that the jaguar is the apex predator in much of South America, and of course a larger region going further north, even into North America. But mostly they live in South America, and so like most apex predators, they are venerated to a certain extent. And I know in Aztec culture, the jaguar knights were sort of the top dogs under the king or the emperor, whatever they called themselves. So we have this Teyu Yagua is the first son of Tao and Karana, who you mentioned earlier, and one of the 7 legendary monsters. He seems, I'm going to say it's a he, seems to be a god or a spirit, because it seems like the gods and spirits are almost interchangeable here, of the caves, but also the fruits. So that is an interesting combination, because there aren't a lot of fruits that I'm aware of anyway that grow in caves. So what's going on? What's going on with Teyu here?
Yeah, Teyu is a very funny conundrum for me, because by the myth and legend of him, despite being considered the most horrifying of them all, he gives a similar idea for the one in Japanese called Yamato no Richi. I had to look upon, I did not know about him, to read about, but the one that I did know about him is from the Greek mythology, Cerberus, the one who guards Hades and Hell, and had multiple heads. The image of Teju Hagu is of a multiple head dog, which actually a hydra of 7 heads, and very, very ugly. A hybrid between a lizard and a dog. But he is horrifying, has ferocity, but Tupan likes pretty much like, be a good dog, be a good dog. And it's funny because he is tempered by Tupan and not by Tao. Like the god of good tempers him. And he left him calm and harmless. Still, he is feared for his fiery gaze. He gives a fiery gaze to the person and don't go there. Okay. So he feeds on fruit. He needs a fruit of his brother, which I believe is from his brother Yasi Yatere, which I was not able to find about, that gives him honey, his favorite fruit, which is honey. And he is considered the Lord of the Caves and protected fruits, which I believe is any type of fruits in Brazil, and honey. And for some reason, he is mentioned as a brilliant protector of buried treasure. So he's a weird conundrum, like a beast with 7 heads who can maul you to destruction, but stay calm, and if you give him honey and fruit, he'll treat you well and know how to bear treasure.
So we have 7 heads again. Is it different heads? Is it the same like the Hydra? What does he look like? Is it like a humanoid body with 7 heads or 7 elongated necks? I'm sure there's lots of different renditions, but what's the general physical description of this character?
He looks like more like a Hydra. Each head similar to each other. A hybrid between a lizard dog with a Hydra. The body is very shiny scales. The heads are long necks with the heads looking like dogs instead of like the ferocious of the Hydra. And he doesn't look like Cerberus, who's like so muscular, so strong. He looks like a weird combination of Cerberus with Hydra. That's what he looks like.
That's a good description. Okay, so not humanoid at all, complete chimera, a beast, not man. So our next one is Moboi Tuai. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm giving it almost like a South Pacific type of iteration, which you said literally translates to snake parrot. And the second son of our friends Tao and Kirana, god of the waterways and aquatic creatures, I guess underneath Ayara, of course. And I just couldn't help but notice that the description isn't that far away from, a dragon or other flying snakes that really is sort of common in a lot of theologies, legends, folklores, and that if it's a flying parrot, I assume that there's colors involved as well to distinguish parrot from other birds. But I'm going to let you take it over and tell us about Moboi Tuai, even starting with, like, you know, how badly I bastardized the pronunciation.
Well, it is, I believe the best way to describe the name is Moboi Tui. Almost like you're saying my boy, but it's Moboi Tui. You were kind of on point saying that it gives idea of a dragon, of a lizard, but he actually does seem much more like a snake because his habitat is the swamps, and Brazil, the Amazons, the snakes, the famous anaconda. So he gives a vibe of looking much more like a giant anaconda, which kind of have a weird face that looks like a mixture of a snake with a bird, which does give idea of a snake pirate. The mouth open with a tongue that it looks like the tongue of a snake, but the mouth is kind of looks like it's not a parrot's mouth, a bird's mouth, but it's not a flew out snake mouth. And he's very greenish. This gives a very colorful also. And
is the mouth like like almost like a weaponized beak, sort of like the giant squids?
Almost, without the beak. It's almost like that thing that sucks on you, but has a tongue that goes there.
Ooh, that sounds terrible. That sounds like those soul suckers from the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah. The idea of the legend says that he has a malevolent gaze that frightens everyone who has the bad luck to be found by him. He patrols the swamps and protects the amphibian life. He enjoys the humidity and flowers. He lets out incredible and terrible squawk of what a bird would do, which can be heard from very far off, which is so sterile in all who hear it. And a good way to better describe his appearance. The creature is part snake and part parrot. Has the form of an enormous serpent with a huge parrot head and huge beak. He also has red forked tongue, the color blood. His skin is scaly and streaked. Feathers cover his face.
Sounds almost like a vampire of the swamps that flies, but this is a monster that I feel like I'm very safe from because I hate humidity, so I don't think that I would ever be wandering around his domains, at least not on purpose.
Same.
So I'm feeling okay with this one. So we now come to our third son, Monai or Monet. You'll say it correctly. The third son of Tau and Karana. And this is the god of open fields, which I assume is tied somewhat, or I'm thinking is tied somewhat maybe to farming as well. And he was defeated by the sacrifice of Porasi. So a lot we have to unpack there. So let's start with you telling us about Monai, what's open fields, and then you can tell us about the sacrifice of Porasi and why somebody decided to sacrifice whoever Porasi was to defeat this god. And did defeat mean death, or did defeat mean just he'll leave us alone? So take it from there, my friend.
Yeah, in terms of appearance, he has an enormous serpent-like body with two straight, colorful horns over his head, which serve as an antenna. A giant serpent is a weird thing that he looks like. He usually dominates the open fields. He can climb trees with ease and slide down to hunt the birds who he feds and dominates with. Apparently he has the hypnotic power of his antennas. Ooh. Because of this, it's called the Lord of the Air. And as far as the sacrifice, Monai is found of the apparently the story is that he is found of stealing and hiding the product of his misdeeds in the cave. So he's very mischievous. His continuous robbing and raiding in the village provoked great discord among the people as they all accuse each other from robberies and mysterious disappearance quotes, I must say.
Well, this makes sense. If he's the god of the open fields, he wouldn't like urbanization, right? I mean, that would be sort of his adversary.
Yes, that makes sense. The townspeople joined to put an end to Monai's misdeeds and those of his brothers. The beautiful Poracé offered herself to carry out this mission. I was not able to find much about Poracé, but what I was able to find is that she convinced Monai that she had fallen in love with him, so she was using seduction as a tactic, and that before they celebrate their wedding, she wanted to meet his brothers, the other monsters. Monai left her in the care of Teju Jaguar, who we already talked about.
Right.
The
seven-headed, yeah.
And left to search for the rest of his brothers. The boy Tuai, who we already talked, Yazei Yatari, who I was not able to find, Kurupiri, who is in the short version is the old version of the Tupi Guarani for Curupira, who is the folklore, if we are able to talk about it, and Luizon, who is the short version of the Tupi Guarani for the werewolf, and Wawau, seriously, is Wawau, the god of hills and mountains. He is the one that I found the least about, unfortunately. When he finally brought them all, they began the wedding ritual. So it was a great, big wedding. The bride exchanged the drinks freely and quickly became drunk. Because that's what else? It was in that moment that she attempted to escape from the cave, which was closed off by a huge stone. Monai prevented her from leaving and threw her back into the cave. Parazi screamed to alarm the people who were waiting outside. Knowing that she was lost, she ordered the people to burn the cave, even with her inside. While this killed her herself, they also destroyed Tao and Kirana, cursed descendants, including Monai. So basically, she was able to kill the 7 monsters by sacrifice herself.
Wow.
In return of this sacrifice, the gods lit her soul and changed it to a small, intense point of light. Since then, the gods destined the spirit of Parasi to light up the aurora.
Okay, well, Parasi, I guess well done. Killed 7 god monsters. That's like Hercules stuff right there. Okay, so now we're going to get to we're going to back up to back when these monsters were alive, and we're going to go to Jassi Jatiri, who you indicated was a piece of the moon, a little piece of the moon, and one of the 7 kids, of course. Well, they're all 7 kids at this point. But you noted that Jassi Jatiri was especially important in Paraguay, which is cool because we're getting into another now country, which again, I don't think we can stress enough that the borders of these countries were drawn up, more recently. That these traditions and religions existed probably hundreds, if not thousands, of years prior to there being these kinds of border lines. I'm not sure if any of them are even similar. So yeah, and you indicated that his domain was the siesta, which is awesome. Hidden treasures and the yerba mate plant, and I don't know what that is. So please tell us about Jassi Jatiri, my friend.
Yes, I will. If I can, I'll even plug here the boogeyman on this because it's relevant. So basically, he is considered to be the Lord Siesta. For those who, for the traditional midday nap, for us here in Latin America. I don't know if it's for you guys in North America too. But according to the widespread version of it, he leaves the forest and wanders the village looking for children who are not napping during the siesta. Although he is generally invisible, he said that he showed himself to children he finds not napping, and that any who look upon his staff, he looks like literally, I'll say, in terms of appearance. Let me describe his appearance first. He's unique. First of all, he's unique because among his brother, that he does not have a monstrous appearance. He does not. He usually described as being a small, perhaps a child, small man, perhaps a child, with long blonde hair and sometimes blue eyes. He's fair in appearance, sometimes described as even beautiful or enchanting, and he carried with him a magical wand staff, sometimes described as a golden can, although I don't know if I know what clothing he wears. I think he sometimes wears nothing. Like most of his brothers, he dwells in the wild and is considered to be protector of especially a specific plant, the herba mate. And he also sometimes protects treasures. So the key thing here is that he does not look monstrous. He's the one who looks like humanoids. Specifically of all his brothers, he looks specifically humanoids. So he shows himself to children who not napping, and that anyone who look at his staff fall into a trance. He may even lure them to a forest with a distinct whistle.
Ooh, nice.
What happens to such enchanted children basically differs upon which version of the story you're telling. So, for the warning myth, have multiple versions because, once again, there was no writing version of the language. And all myths have survived as word of mouth, basically. The fairier version of the tale, he's considered a friend of such disobedient children, taking them to hiding places in the forest to play, and feeding them with honey and fruit. He probably get them from his brother who protects treasure, Pau, Thea. And at the end of siesta, where they all are weary from play, he gives them a magical kiss which transports them back to their beds with no memory of their experience. There are more versions, there are other versions who the story is less fair. The other versions, he takes entranced children back to a cave, where he puts out their eyes and imprisons them for a ton amount of time, sustained with wild fruits and berries until they become feral like animals, the children. Still, there are even more gruesome tales, say that they are brought back to his brother, Ao, a cannibalistic creature who feeds upon their flesh.
Well, that's good, because we can cover Ao right now, who you indicated is basically the god of the underworld, and the opposite. Ao is the personification of light, clouds, in the ordinary world, and is opposed to the darkness and the underworld, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I lost you there for a second. So that's Ao. So this fellow that we were talking about here, Jesse, he brings the souls to Ao, and Ao, even though stands against the underworld, still takes the souls or feeds on people. Okay.
There's different versions, and one version is bad, and the other version is good.
So he's almost like Janus. He's got two-faced. He's got two natures. He's Jekyll and Hyde. All right, now I think this one is the one I've been waiting for. I think this is Kurupira, and I think this is who you're going to tell me is the werewolf.
I'm going to get there, because one more thing about Jaci Jaterere, I was going to tell you that that's versions of the myths. They are usually told a similar way I was going to get you, is that to the boogeyman. They are usually told to frighten the children to be obedient and take a nap during the siesta. You said about the Paraguay, that in the Paraguay, parents are known to warn their children not to wander off alone during siesta to prevent them from being kidnapped by Jaci Jaterere. That's basically what I was going to suggest about Paraguay, you know. And it's funny enough because one thing I wrote down about the boogeyman, if I could get a cheap go to the folklore, is that the boogeyman here in Brazil is called o homem do saco, the sack man, the bag man. And here he is seen as a mid-aged or elder drifter who visits households in search of naughty young children for him to carry away with him in his sack or bag. When the bagman happens to knock at a house, when the people have a naughty kid that they no longer want, the parents give the bagman to their kid, and he puts in his sack and carries them away forever. The story is told to basically all the children to like behave, or your parents gonna give you away. And since we're talking about other children, I'm gonna go to my last segue, my last diversion. Is that something that I found interesting is that in Chile and Argentina, and particularly in other southern austral zone, he is known as El Viejo del Saco, the old man with a bag. And this is where it gets even interesting. He is known as someone who walks around the neighborhood every day around supper time. The thing is, in this version, is that this character in this version is not considered or perceived of any superpowers or have any mythical or fantastic creature by the children. Instead, for them, he's just a insane, psychotic murderer that somehow has been accepted by their society, which they allow him to take the child that has been given to him willingly by disappointed parents, and any child that is not home by sundown or supper time.
If that doesn't sound like medieval Dark Ages Europe kind of stuff, I don't know what does. That is very dark Monty Python-esque right there. Yeah, it sounds like evil Santa Claus, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think maybe around Christmas time I'll do a deep dive into Santa Claus, because I think originally whatever Santa Claus first started as was sort of like this. I think the original. Yeah, I think there was there was a bad Santa Claus, right?
Krampus. Is that Krampus?
Right, Krampus. But I think originally there was Krampus, and then slowly over time we turned Krampus into more of a happy fella, a force for good. But I think the original Santa Claus was closer to the Krampus. But yeah, so all right. So you promised me a werewolf, and I think it's Curupira. I might be wrong, but Curupira is next on our list, whether I'm right or wrong. So tell us about Curupira.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're wrong. Curupira is not the werewolf. I apologize.
It's my bad.
Lobizon. Yes, Lobizon, the werewolf. But the Curupira, I'm going to go the most in depth because he also gets part of a lot of love on the folklore for Brazil. When it comes to the Guarani mythology, he is an essential figure there. In the mythology of Guarani, he is often blamed for somebody getting unexpected or unwanted pregnancy. They said that his penis is said to be prehensile, and owning to his length is supposed to be able to extend it through doors, windows, or other openings in a home, and impregnate a sleeping woman without even wanting to enter the house. You know, he got the size. You know, apparently, together. You know, he's a scapegoat used by the woman who commit adultery or cheating or whatever you want to call, to avoid the wrath of their husband, or by a single woman to explain their pregnancy. Children who were fathered by the Curupira were expected to be small, ugly, hairy, much like their father. And if a male to inherit something of their father's virility. So yeah. In some cases, Curupira is blamed with the disappearance of a young woman, supposedly stealing them away to his home in the forest for use, and satiating his libidos, aka rape. The legend has faded away from the time, and that legend has been replaced by this Curupira by the current legend of the folklore of Brazil by Curupira said the other way, and now is the Curupira folklore, which is the first ever documented in Brazil by the priest José de Anchieta in 1560. I was able to find the date. And long before the arrival of the colonizers, so I assume that one was an old one. The natives used to tell stories about fantastic being that live in the forest and protected from the army. The name Curupira means child's body in Tupi Guarani language. Although there were some regional variants about his description, his most popular version is the form of a boy with flame-colored hair and a feet turned to backwards. His feet is backwards. Also, he apparently has several powers to trip wings, such as he can cast illusions, enchantment, he has super speed, transmutation, and great strength. There's only one consensus in all of them, is that he's the guardian of the fauna and flora, so he protects the forest of Brazil. He's a fair and brave entity. He does not tolerate those who threaten the order of the environment, but he helps those who are lost or in need. Like all children, he enjoys gifts and harmless mischief. His most powerful weapon against hunters and people who just flat out bad is cunning. He's smart. He's full of tricks. He's misled any wrongdoers, making them lost in the woods. Oh, why I'm here. His backward fear, for instance, is make them confuse the hunters who may try to follow his tracks. He also used whistles, imitate sounds of both nature and human voice to confuse his targets. The most severe punishment he could do to you is transform, if you are a predator, into the prey. For instance, make somebody who's an evil hunter become a helpless woodland critter. You can summarize his legend as a myth of nature protection. He's a supernatural force that defends plants and animals from harmful hunting, fishing, and whatever bad restriction or resource made by man. He is one of the most unforgettable marks in my culture when it comes to folklore, and he is especially, I'll say, excellent marketing tool for culture here in Brazil. I know that firsthand because when I spent 1 year in game design, I had to make a game for tower defense, and we used environment to be our main theme. Curupira was our symbol, and it was a complete success. I have seen that in many places, still used for education of children. He is a fantastic folklore creature in many examples to this day in Brazil.
All right, so give me our last one. I just can't help notice how you have sort of the children of gods who are sort of godlike themselves. It's a lot like the Gorgons. It's almost like Lilith was the mother of monsters. The Nephilim, who, according to some, were the children of sort of the Watchers, the angels who went bad. And some of them became monster-like, but some of them became hero-like as well. Depending on who you listen to, all of them are monster-like, or they're whatever it is. But that seems to be something that's pan-cultural, that you have children of gods that become sort of monster-like with, but very conflicting types of personalities, and sometimes region to region play very different roles. So anyway, without further ado, now I think I'm right that you're going to get me to my werewolf.
Yes. So now we get to Luizon. Luizo or Lobizon is the name of the creature of the Guarani mythology. He's the seventh one of the cursed children between Tau and Quirena. And he also is known in Paraguay and many other places. It is a variant of the word lobizon. It is a name used in Argentina and Uruguay to describe, werewolf of a similar creature. And there is the variation in Brazil is lobisomem, more literally meaning wolfman. We don't know what name Luizon may had prior to the influence of European-based mythology. I think it's like lost in the world what the name was. But Guarani has no writing language also, so once again the myths pass through storyline. So for what I know, Luizon was how it was called before. His appearance is in the original version of the myth. Luizon he is a seventh child, does the most coarse of the bunch. He's the one he got the baddest end of the stick. He has a vaguely human appearance, but said to be extremely ugly, even horrendous looking. He has a long, dirty hair that fell down to cover most of his form, pale, sickly looking skin and eyes, and accompanied by the constant fatted odor of death and decay. So frighteningly repulsive was his appearance that his mad presence would insist terror in any unfortunate soul enough to encounter the beast. Yeah. He habitats is the burial grounds of the place. The legend of the Big Guarani for him said that he is the Lord of the Night and is associated with death. His habitat is exclusively cemeteries, burial grounds, or other locations that you can associate with death itself, and his sole source of food was death and rotting flesh. If he passes through your legs, it's said that person turns into a Luizon or a werewolf. In some versions of the story, he only shows up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights.
When did Monday, Wednesday, and Friday become a thing in South America? Was it before the colonizers, or was it after?
Yeah, it's something that I found interesting in the mythology and the folklore. Apparently, our creatures, they have a schedule. I only show up this day. You show up this day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like he's got a part-time gig.
He has a part-time gig.
He works at Amazon the rest of the time. Ironic.
Yeah. So he is filled with the same function as the Green Reaper in the many European societies, and he said that his touch of his cold, calm hand was sure sign that 1 days of the earth were numbered. So with the arrival of the European settlers, aka the Portuguese mostly, in the area, came the myths and the legends of the non-indigenous to the Guarani people. So the idea, the gist is that over the time, the Luizon slowly began to mix with the legend of the werewolf, to the point where Luizon began to lose many of his associations with death. In many areas of the Guarani-speaking world, the Luizon description has changed to a half a man, half dog creature, and now bears many similarities to the classic werewolf story. The modern tales of Luizon that hunts by night the lights of the moon is no longer confined to cemeteries and may hunt living victims down for food. If it is sometimes also believed that the curse of the Luizon may be transferred to others victims by biting, like the traditional werewolves.
I have a perhaps a very ignorant question here, but are there wolves in South America?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is.
Excellent. All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense now. Are they large, like sort of like the North American wolves, or are they more like coyotes?
They're. I don't think there is like a specific. I think they're the traditional wolf.
Okay. Just
traditional wolf.
Wolf be wolf. Okay. Very good. You learn something new every day. Well, today I've learned a lot of things that are new, but that's the purpose. All right. Sorry. Carry on.
No problem.
Yeah, well, you can continue.
The specific wolf that exists in Brazil is called Lobo Guará. Is the only one that is in basically on Brazil. In the South America, I don't know all of them, but specifically in Brazil is Lobo Guará. He really looks like the traditional wolf.
Okay.
He really looks like the traditional wolf.
So werewolves make sense then, of course. That's great. So. Very cool. Is there anything else about Lobeson that we should know?
Yes, the part of transition that he had from the original myth to a more werewolf-like creature is because Luzon was the seventh son. Because he was the seventh son. So the seventh son, especially in Paraguay, they think that in Paraguay, if you have 7 sons, the seventh son is thought to be cursed to become a werewolf. To be honest, there's even the myth folklore in Brazil. They think that if you are the seventh son, that you are a werewolf. They joke about that, especially if the person's all hairy up.
So if you're the seventh son, do they call the sack man? I mean, that seems like the reasonable thing to do. If you've got a seventh son, you think they're going to be a werewolf, they're a baby, it's time to call the sack man.
Yeah, it's time to call the sack man.
Okay, well, maybe that's what people should do. I mean, use your mythological creatures to your advantage, I suppose. So, speaking of mythology, you did a pretty good job of trying to tell us who some of the deities were associated with. We spent some time on Jassy, and you said that Jassy is identified with Diana of the Romans. Now, this is where I have to confess I get confused, because there's Diana and Minerva in the Roman tradition, and there's Athena and Artemis in the Greek tradition, and I don't know which one is which. So Athena's more about wisdom and tactics, Minerva's more like the huntress, so I'm not sure which one Diana is, but I guess people can go back and listen to Jassy's characteristics and decide. You also know that Jassy is identified with Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs, who's a male bird god and sort of like the head of the Aztec panoply as opposed to lesser, which is interesting as well. And is sort of a firebird, but sort of a little bit like the parrot snake god, but less snake, more full bird with full plume and gold and lots of colors. Legend had it that when the Spaniards first came, the Aztecs thought it was Quetzalcoatl because they saw the colorful pantaloons and the sun was shining off the silver armor and it looked like gold. I'm not sure if that's just a romanticized story, if there's something to that. You also indicate Chandra of the Hindus. I know nothing about Chandra of the Hindus. I am seeking someone who's an expert in Hinduism and the panoply that came before Hinduism, the Veda, the Vinaya, and Isis of the ancient Egyptians, which also makes sense because Isis of the ancient Egyptians is tied very much to the Roman and Greek gods as well. And I think the prevailing wisdom is that the Greeks stole the Egyptian panoply and modified it some, and then of course the Romans did the same with the Greek panoply. So that's not unusual at all that there should be that correlation. We talked about a lot of the culture and the background. Now you went into college level detail about sort of some of the philosophical influences, and we don't have time for that. Maybe we'll do it on another time, but I commend you. This was great work. This is a master class. I don't know if you have a PhD or not, but in the Garden of Doom, I have planetary power, and I grant you a PhD in Northeast South American mythology, theology, and panculturalism. So you have a PhD in the Garden of Doom, and I hope that you come back, and I thank you very much for your work and your time. So thank you.
I appreciate it, Jeff. It was a fantastic experience. There were a couple of moments that I felt a little bit preoccupied because I felt like I was not delivering. But I honestly felt a little bit nervous. But you make me feel like so much easier as time goes by, because it's been a while since I had like this type of interview. It was the first time that I was in a podcast. It was the first time there was an interview in a podcast, and you were an excellent host. The way that you brought the conversation and the way that you made these wonderful questions, you made excellent questions. And I felt like the entire research that I did was completely well done. and made valid. You made the effort valid, and I felt like I went back to the entire knowledge that I acquired to studying, and I felt this is why I studied this, and it was worth it. And I learned a lot about my country that I did not know, the culture about that I did not know myself, and I felt so blessed by it. It was very nice. It was a wonderful conversation. You did what I felt like is the most important thing that somebody in a podcast or in any interview can do, is make the guest feel like he's welcome and he's safe, and that is wonderful. I felt so much in peace, and as that conversation was going, I felt like I'm feeling fine, this is wonderful. I felt much more calm, and there was a lot of things that were not tackled on, and I felt fine, and I had a lot of great time.
I don't foreclose a part 2 on this or visiting South America again, and we can certainly talk about that in the near and medium future. I feel like you've done a lot of work on this, and you probably should focus on your regular life a little bit if you want. But yeah, you're welcome on again. I've always liked you. I like you, cyber-wise, and this is actually the first time we've spoken. So very impressive. I think you were a terrific guest, and thank you for putting me over. But you were great. You did the hard work. Is there anything out there that you need to plug, or are you one of those few people who has absolutely nothing to sell?
No. I don't think that wrestling related, non-wrestling related, or nothing.
Nothing. Period. Nothing needs to be wrestling related. This is not a wrestling related show.
To plug, I don't think so. I am just right now. If there's anything else, I would say that wish me luck, because starting this week of Mother's Day, it would come now the order how I should start approaching to start my master's degree. I want to start to do it, so I became a teacher in the university that I got my 2 degrees. I want to be a teacher for a living. I think it's a noble profession. I think it's good to give back to that place. And I would say wish me luck to that adventure.
I do wish you luck, but I have to tell you, I don't think you need luck, because you've already demonstrated the skill set, and you demonstrated the skill set in your second or third language. So you don't need the luck, but yes, good luck to you, because you asked me to wish you luck, so I absolutely wish you buena suerte, which is Spanish, not Portuguese, so I'm an idiot. But yeah.
Boa sorte is Portuguese.
Boa sorte. But you don't need it. You're going to do great, and thank you very much for coming into the garden. All right, folks. Well, that was Rodrigo, and I think this was a really great show. Lots of terrific information that we came upon. I do want to remind you that if you're hearing this almost by accident, it's probably because you were subscribed to the old feed. There's 2 feeds for you to find Garden of Doom. One of them is by subscribing to Hammerlock Hangover, the Wrestling Soup Network. Yes, Hammerlock Hangover is a wrestling podcast, but on the Wrestling Soup Network, if you subscribe to Hammerlock Hangover on the Wrestling Soup Network, as opposed to regular Hammerlock Hangover, Garden of Doom comes as well. So if you like wrestling, check out Hammerlock Hangover. It's a good show. It's different. We talked to a promoter who just celebrated their 5-year anniversary, sort of the A to Z. How do you build a promotion? We also talked to a photographer who started his career as a wrestler, had a horrific injury, but was in the news recently because he was part of the kerfuffle regarding copyright rights that involved the Young Bucks and Chelsea Green. So he went from sort of having no internet profile to being in 1.2 million tweets sort of overnight. I'm probably stating that, but not exactly right. Anyway, so you can subscribe to Hammerlock Hangover, the Wrestling Soup Network. You'll get Garden of Doom. That really is the preference, because if everything's funneled onto that feed, it does increase the chances and opportunities for monetization, which is the dream. But also the Garden of Doom under Jeff Lipman will get you the Garden of Doom as well without Hammerlock Hangover. You heard my preference, but my stronger preference is that people listen to the show, period. if you subscribe to Garden of Doom Break the Apocalypse feed, you won't get anything anymore. That one is dead. There was some problem where people were downloading Break the Apocalypse and they were getting Garden of Doom. So we obviously severed that technologically. And anybody who follows the show recently, you know that Shaheen was on a show recently here with me as a guest. And if you listen to Break the Apocalypse, apparently I was a prominent figure on John's 50th birthday episode as well. So, all is cool there. We're all friends. So nobody should think anything otherwise. So I said my piece. We have some exciting episodes coming up. I think you're going to be happy. We've scheduled the next 2 Land of the Lost episodes. So one is for the end of this month and then one is in mid-July. I am booked into the first week of September. Fully. I have all shows booked then, and I also have at least one show recorded in case of emergency. So we're going to continue to give you what I think is a unique variety of serious and less serious shows, but we're going to try to approach all of them with the goal of entertaining you and informing you, and maybe it's also considered educational as well. But hopefully it's a unique product, so I do ask you to like, share, subscribe, give a 5-star rating. I don't say these things enough. Write a review on both feeds if you don't mind, but at least one. Got some really good feedback last week from Maya Christine's show, so that's great. We're going to have her back another time to talk about some more specific stuff. Yeah, and that's in the fall. So, like I said, I'm booked solid through the first week in September, but I do have sporadic other shows booked even past that. And before you know it, the next Nephilim Anthropology Conference is gonna happen in October. So I'll be featuring some of those speakers again, and maybe some of the same people with new information, and maybe some new speakers in addition. So thanks again for tuning in. I know the show's a little bit long, so I'm going to check out now. But thank you for coming into the Garden of Doom, and take care all.